آپ اور ہم باشعور ہونے کے ناطے دنیا کی بدلتی صورتحال اور اکثر ممالک کے درمیان موجود کشیدگی سے باخبر ہیں۔ گزشتہ دنوں بلوچستان تھنک ٹینک نیٹ ورک کے زیر اہتمام بلوچستان یونیورسٹی آف انفارمیشن اینڈ ٹیکنالوجی، انجینئرنگ اینڈ مینجمنٹ سائنسز میں دنیا کی تیزی سے بدلتے حالات اور طاقت کے حصول کی جو ایک دوڑ سپر پاور ممالک کے درمیان جاری ہے، ان تمام مسائل کو مد نظر رکھتے ہوئے ایک انتہائی اہم سیمینار کا انعقاد کیا گیا۔ سیمینار کا موضوع گریٹ پاور کمپٹیشن، چیلنجز اینڈ اپرچونٹیز فار پاکستان تھا۔ سیمینار کی اہمیت کو مد نظر رکھتے ہوئے اور تمام اسپیکرز کی شرکت کو ممکن بنانے کے لیے سیمینار کو بنیادی طور پر 2 سیشنز میں تقسیم کیا گیا۔ پہلے سیشن کی صدارت سابق سفیر قاضی ایم خلیل اللہ نے کی، جس کا موضوع US چائنا گروئنگ جیو پولیٹیکل، جیو اسٹریٹجک اینڈ جیو اکنامک کمپٹیشن تھا۔ سیمینار کا آغاز قاضی ایم خلیل اللہ کے ابتدائی کلمات سے ہوا، جس کے بعد اسسٹنٹ پروفیسر ڈپارٹمنٹ آف اسٹریٹجک اسٹڈیز NDU ڈاکٹر بلال زبیر نے گلوبل ہیجمونک ٹسل بٹوین US اینڈ چائنا، فال آؤٹ اینڈ ایمرجنگ ڈائنامکس کے حوالے سے اپنے خیالات کا اظہار کیا، جس کے بعد سینٹر فار ایرو اسپیس اینڈ سیکیورٹی اسٹڈیز اسلام آباد کے ریسرچ ڈائریکٹر ڈاکٹر عثمان چوہان نے US چائنا گروئنگ ٹریڈ، ٹیکنالوجی اینڈ اکنامک رائیولری، امپلیکیشنز فار دا ایلائز کے موضوع پر روشنی ڈالی۔ بلوچستان تھنک ٹینک نیٹ ورک کی اسسٹنٹ ڈائریکٹر ڈاکٹر حنانہ زرار نے ملٹی ڈائمینشنل ملٹری فورس ماڈرنائزیشن آف دا US اینڈ چائنا، پراسپیکٹس آف این آرم ریس اینڈ ایسکلیشن کے حوالے سے بات کی، جبکہ سیشن کی آخری اسپیکر حلیمہ سعدیہ تھی، جو انٹرنیشنل پیس اینڈ اسٹیبلٹی انسٹیٹیوٹ آف اسلام آباد کی PhD کی طالبہ ہیں۔ انہوں نے ایمرجنس آف دا کوڈ اینڈ آکوس کنٹیننگ دا رائز آف چائنا اینڈ ری انفورسنگ انڈیا کے موضوع پر اپنا تجزیہ پیش کیا۔ سوال جواب کے مرحلے کے بعد جناب قاضی ایم خلیل اللہ کے اختتامی کلمات کے ساتھ ہی یہ سیشن بخوبی اختتام پذیر ہوا، جبکہ دوسرے سیشن کی صدارت سابق سفیر ریٹائرڈ رضا محمد نے کی، جو اسلام آباد پالیسی ریسرچ انسٹیٹیوٹ IPRI کے صدر ہیں۔ اس سیشن کا موضوع دا US چائنا رائیولری، امپیکٹ آن دا ریجن اینڈ پاکستان تھا۔ ڈاکٹر نعیم سالک، ایگزیکٹو ڈائریکٹر اسٹریٹجک ویژن انسٹیٹیوٹ SVI اسلام آباد نے دا US انڈیا گروئنگ اسٹریٹجک پارٹنرشپ، امپلیکیشن فار ساؤتھ ایشین اسٹریٹجک اسٹیبلٹی پر اپنے ذریع خیالات کا اظہار کیا، جس کے بعد ڈاکٹر فضل الرحمان، ایکسپرٹ آن SPEC اسٹڈیز نے پراسپیکٹس، چیلنجز اینڈ اپرچونٹیز فار پاکستان کے حوالے سے بات کی، جبکہ پروفیسر سید رفعت حسین، سینٹر ڈیفنس اینڈ فارن افیئر اینالسٹ اینڈ کنسلٹنٹ آف گورنمنٹ پالیسی اینڈ پبلک ایڈمنسٹریشن ایٹ NUST اسلام آباد نے دا رائز آف کمپیٹنگ ریجنل رائیولری ان دا پوسٹ US withdrawal فرام افغانستان، چیلنجز اینڈ آپشنز فار پاکستان کے موضوع پر بات کی۔ سوال جواب کے مرحلے اور ڈاکٹر نعیم سالک کے اختتامی کلمات کے بعد سیمینار کے کی اسپیکر، ایڈوائزر نیشنل کمانڈ اتھارٹی ADNCA لیفٹیننٹ جنرل ریٹائرڈ خالد احمد کدوائی نے سیمینار سے خطاب کیا۔ انہوں نے سیمینار کے چیف ایگزیکٹو، سابق گورنر بلوچستان اور سابق چیف جسٹس آف بلوچستان ہائی کورٹ جناب امان اللہ یاسین زئی سمیت تمام شرکاء اور اسپیکرز کا شکریہ ادا کیا اور بلوچستان تھنک ٹینک نیٹ ورک سے اپنی دلی وابستگی کا اظہار کرتے ہوئے کہا کہ
It always gives me great pleasure to be in Quetta and spend quality time with one of my favorite think tanks, the Balochistan Think Tank Network, BTTN. Further, it gives me added pleasure, personal satisfaction and pride in seeing the rapid progress and growth of BTTN as it emerges on the academic and intellectual horizon of Pakistan. In a very short time of less than 3 years, BTTN has earned a nationally respected name for itself. In Balochistan alone, BTTN has established as the go-to strategic think tank on a variety of subjects of interest, whether these be of local level interest or national or international strategic interest. This is entirely in line as visualized in the founding objectives laid down for BTTN.
لیفٹیننٹ جنرل خالد احمد کدوائی نے سیمینار کے موضوع کو آج کل کے بین الاقوامی حالات کے تناسب سے انتہائی موضوع قرار دیتے ہوئے کہا،
The topic chosen by BTTN for its annual seminar could not have been more relevant to the strategic environments and from Pakistan's perspective, may I say, challenging strategic environments prevailing in today's geopolitical and geoeconomic world. Great power competition, challenges and opportunities for Pakistan. However, the great game of today, call it great power competition, as in this seminar, is very much on. Only with a change of caste, characters and actors.
उन्होंने सुपर पावर्स के दरमियान ताकत के हुसूल की बेकाबू होती जंग और इस पावर गेम की तारीख और खित्ते बिलखुसूस पाकिस्तान पर पड़ने वाले असरात के बारे में कहा।
If one looks at all these developments closely, I think these issues carry strong relevance and lessons for countries like Pakistan and its deterrence policies when faced with asymmetrically military, political and economical challenges in South Asia with direct strategic effects on regional strategic stability. In my opinion, strategic stability in South Asia, especially from Pakistan's viewpoint, has been well served because of the consequences of India's strategic overreach against China. With committed deployments of the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force from Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh, a portion of the Indian military is likely to remain fixed in the northern front of nearly 3,700 kilometers for the foreseeable future, with an additional logistical burden which is far, far greater than that required to sustain Indian positions at Siachen alone. And that eases pressures against Pakistan, creating relatively greater equilibrium and balance in the strategic stability paradigm.
जंग अजीम डोम के बाद वजूद में आने वाली सुपर पावर्स अमेरिका और रूस के इक़्तिदार और जवाल का जिक्र करते हुए उन्होंने कहा कि
The US has of course been an undisputed superpower since the end of the Second World War, particularly since the demise of the USSR. However, it has faced challenges to its world domination in the past and continues to face serious challenges to its status today. Interestingly, not only from China and Russia in the politico-military domains, but also economic challenges. There is an increasing de-dollarization drive by many countries in an attempt to break free from American monetary hegemony. Then there is the enlargement of the BRICS, grouping of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, which now also includes some important countries of the Middle East, which were thus far considered to be in the US area of influence. Mildly put, one can say that the US is struggling as it tries to retain its superpower status. The second superpower of our time, the USSR, collapsed quite dramatically right before our eyes in the early 90s and splintered into the original 15 odd republics that had earlier come to form the then USSR some 70 years ago in 1922. The mantle of the collapsing USSR, along with nuclear weapons, passed on to the successor state of Russia. For over 3 decades since then, Russia has struggled to regain its inherited superpower status politically, economically, militarily, and technologically. However, both the USSR, read Russia, and the US have demonstrated vulnerabilities and limits to power through strategic debacles in Afghanistan, one following the other, refusing to learn from history, with serious consequences for their respective geopolitical clout and global influence.
गुज़िश्ता 2 साल से रूस और यूक्रेन के दरमियान जारी जंग के बायस पैदा होने वाले सिक्योरिटी, पावर और इख्तियार के हुसूल की इस रस्साकशी के नतीजे में दुनिया के बेशतर ममालिक के मुआशी, माशरती और सिक्योरिटी के हवाले से गैर महफूज मुस्तकबिल का हवाला देते हुए पाकिस्तान पर इस जंग के फौरी तौर पर मुरत्तब होने वाले असरात का जिक्र करते हुए उन्होंने कहा कि
For over 2 years now, Russia and the US are directly embroiled in Ukraine in what essentially is yet another struggle for security, power and domination. While the world suffers the consequences politically and economically and anxiously awaits the conclusion of this quite unwarranted conflict, I have no doubt that the eventual outcome will redefine the future global strategic balance in more than one way. In the meantime, besides the broader geopolitical and geoeconomic outcome that might emerge in the indefinite future, there are issues of immediate relevance and concern as the Ukraine conflict rages. Some of these issues touch Pakistan directly or indirectly. One, the use of energy, both gas and oil, as also wheat, as a strategic tool of war. Two, the real possibility of the use of nuclear weapons, especially tactical nuclear weapons or TNWs, leading possibly to a global Armageddon. While Russia has chosen to deploy the tactical nuclear weapons on the Belarus-Ukrainian border as a deterrent, as a warning, or for possible employment. The other side too continues to respond by its own nuclear threats and warnings rather loosely. The latest in this one-upmanship was Poland recently. And three, Russia has also walked back from its ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, the CTBT, indicating intention to test nuclear weapons if the US were to do so, or even if the US were not to do so. And who can tell then that both India and Pakistan might actually welcome such an opportunity to test their own new weapon designs, even as the prevailing non-proliferation regime is settled. Further, as a corollary to these issues, one could also perhaps debate the now hypothetical possibility of what might have been if Ukraine had not given up its nuclear arsenal a few decades ago, I think in a moment of strategic insanity, in exchange for unreliable international security guarantees. These guarantees, of course, did not rescue Ukraine when most needed. Would Ukraine have been able to join NATO without a bullet being fired because its nuclear weapons would have deterred Russia from invading?
दुनिया के खाके पर तेजी से उभरती और अपनी ताकत का लोहा मनवाती तीसरी सुपर पावर चीन के बारे में उनका कहना था कि
In the geopolitical milieu of today's global order or disorder, it is the third superpower of our era, China, which is emerging, some say has emerged, as a brand new superpower, posing multiple challenges to the US in the political, economic, military, and technological spheres, and is now making soft inroads even in areas of traditional US influence. Even though the meetings between President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping, and now the recent visit of the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to China, may have calmed nerves, the great game of the great power competition remains very much on, with desperate American efforts to contain the rise of China, duly identified as the main threat, with a series of alliance building like the AUKUS and the Quad, and getting countries like India, Australia, and a few Far Eastern countries on board for playing the contain China game. The fact is that ever since President Obama's policy of pivot to Asia over a decade ago, the resultant focus of the US to contain the rise of China is today the singular dynamic driving the international, and in the case of Asia particularly, the regional geopolitical scene, with chips falling wherever they might. These, ladies and gentlemen, are tectonic events which speak of China's emerging international diplomatic clout, which rests on solid economic strength as the world's second largest economy. And this, despite the fact that China's latest military budget is only 27% of the US military budget, that is US $225 billion versus US $817 billion.
इस सारे तनाजुर में पाकिस्तान के एक तरफ चीन के साथ मजबूत रवाबित और दूसरी जानिब अमेरिका से देरीना ताल्लुकात के दरमियान तवाज़ुन पैदा करने के हवाले से उनका कहना था.
What are the emerging challenges for Pakistan, especially because of Pakistan's traditional and strong strategic relationship with China on the one hand, as well as a long history of transactional relationship with the US on the other hand? Is a balancing act possible that would work to serve Pakistan's national interests? How should Pakistan, in the context of its security interests, view and respond to the clear strategic choice that the US has made in over 2 decades by now of propping up India as a counterweight to China? Pakistanis should thank our elders of many decades ago who aligned Pakistan's star with China. The effects of that visionary decision have borne fruit all through these decades, as the Pakistan-China friendship has blossomed steadily and has gone from strength to strength. Today, Pakistan not only has a reliable friend, but a strategic partner in the truest sense of the word, who can be trusted blindly and who has stood by Pakistan and safeguarded its interests in every conceivable way. Internationally, economically, strategically, and militarily, Chinese help has been crucial and on a number of occasions, in fact, life-saving. Consequently, as China rises slowly but surely to claim its historical and rightful place as a great power in a multipolar world, I have no hesitation in saying that Pakistan is on the right side of history. We therefore need to be wise about safeguarding zealously our coveted position and our interests, That does not at all imply walking away or a dilution of our relationships with other world powers, but it does imply certainly the recognition as to where the anchor is.
भारत की बैनुल-अक़वामी सतह पर अपने आप को एक और सुपर पावर के तौर पर मुतारिफ करवाने की कोशिशों और इस दिन में बकिया सुपर पावर के साथ खेले जाने वाले अपनायत के दोहरे खेल और अपने मकासद में बज़ाहिर कामयाब होते भारत की कामयाबी की फहरिस्त के साथ साथ उन्होंने उसे मुख्तलिफ महाजों पर होने वाली शिकस्त का भी जिक्र करते हुए कहा,
There is no doubt that India is a rising regional power and it is aspiring to become a major global power in the future. I have no argument with that. Besides its geographical size and a population of over 1,400 million people, over time, India has developed strategic, military, and economic strengths that compel international players to view India as an emerging power of consequence. In the unfolding international power play, India has smartly aligned itself with the US and the West because of converging mutual interests, mainly over a rising China. Recent events and successes have provided India an opportunity to showcase its claims to recognition as an emerging regional and global power. The landing on the moon, the hosting of the G20 summit in New Delhi, the announcement of the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, all in quick succession have given it at an opportune time for India to glamorize and bask in international recognition. This to a point that it can not only participate in an anti-US trade de-dollarization drive, be on the opposite side in Ukraine, display arrogant behavior before the very powers that are trying to propel it upwards by signing strategic agreements after strategic agreements with it, but also get away with state-sponsored murders in Canada, USA, and in Pakistan, in addition to undertaking state-sponsored terrorism inside Pakistan and in Indian-occupied Kashmir by taking pages out of the Israeli playbook. Now, notwithstanding the relative successes of India in different fields that I have just enumerated, India has also suffered a few strategic setbacks in the last few years, and I think a consideration of these will enable us to take a more balanced view of India. A continued shutout by a direct land route from Afghanistan and Central Asia without Pakistan's consent. B, inability to draw benefits from the alternative route to Afghanistan and Central Asia through Iran's Chabahar port despite massive investments. The concurrent entry of China into Iran with a 25 years, $400 billion deal has further complicated India's strategic investments in Iran. C, the strategic fiasco against China in Ladakh, Doklam, and in Arunachal Pradesh, which carries serious security and operational implications for India's western front with Pakistan, the line of control, and its Siachen positions in a potential two-front war scenario. To briefly recall, China cut India and its surprise military to size in the full glare of international publicity without firing a bullet. India was humiliated. The US and the West had no help to offer and simply watched India get a drubbing. Modi had to lie with a straight face to the world and to the Indian public when he said that no post has been lost and no territory has been lost. The Indian public simply swallowed the lie as a face saver. And now the so-called disengagement publicized by India is nothing more than the formalization and freezing of the strategic territorial reverses suffered by India. India's strategic overreach against China on the line of actual control compelled India to restore the ceasefire on the line of control with Pakistan in order to offset a possible two-front war scenario. The arrogant rhetoric to take Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan also mellowed down for some time because of ground realities. Now, of course, the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, with an eye on the ongoing national election, had the temerity to say that he would chase terrorists inside Pakistan with a convenient memory lapse of the fantastic tea that was served to Abhinandan the last time India came chasing terrorists inside Pakistan.
पाकिस्तान के दिफाई न्यूक्लियर प्रोग्राम और उसकी तस्वीराती अहमियत के बायस पाकिस्तान को हासिल मौक़े से मुताल्लिक़ गुफ्तगू करते हुए उनका कहना था कि
Here I would like to state purely, militarily and strategically, speaking that this is where an opportunity for Pakistan emerges. While Pakistan's military has always been conscious of the disadvantages of a conventional force asymmetrical imbalance. This has largely been offset by the acquisition of a robust nuclear weapons capability. Pakistan's inventory of a variety of nuclear weapons across the entire spectrum of the deterrence paradigm, from strategic to operational to tactical, including first and second strike options, has strengthened Pakistan's hand enormously and allowed Pakistan to transit to the policy of full spectrum deterrence, creating strategic and operational effects to a point where India's large conventional military capability has become quite irrelevant to the security paradigm of South Asia. War as an instrument policy for India stands outlawed. India therefore is not 10 feet tall, and I think it's quite manageable. My recommendation is very simple really, that from such a position of relative strategic security, enforced peace and comfort, it is now up to politics, diplomacy and smart governance to use the time and space window created by Pakistan's nuclear deterrence capability in all earnest for focused economic resurgence in order to regain Pakistan's compromised economic sovereignty and strengthen internal cohesion.
लेफ्टिनेंट रिटायर्ड खालिद अहमद कदवाई के सैर हासिल खिताब और चीफ गेस्ट के इख्तितामी कलमात के बाद स्पीकर्स और मेहमानों में एजाज़ी शील्ड्स भी पेश की गईं और इस तरह ये सेमिनार अपने इख्तिताम को पहुंचा।